Good day, everyone. We are the future educators, and we're going to present about the global media cultures.
Let us first define what is media culture. Media culture is how culture is formed or do emerge in the help or in the influence of media advancement, and how culture contribute to the media advancement. So it's just like the interconnection between those two. So proceeding to the topic, let us also define what is culture. Culture is how people live, how humans live their lives, how they communicate with one another, how do they present themselves. That is the simple terms for culture. Those way of life can manifest in tangible objects like the clothes we use, the infrastructure we build, and anything we build collectively. That also refers to material culture. Shows in intangible ideas like our beliefs, tradition, and practices. That is also referred to as a non-material culture. Culture are articulated in symbols, language, values, beliefs, practices, and norms. Symbols is illustration that convey meanings. Language is a system of symbols that enable members of society to communicate with one another. Values are what we deem good, what we deem important, and beliefs that what we deem true, and practices how we do things. Most importantly, it is enshrined in our norms. Norms are rules and expectations that we have and others have relative to our membership in a society.
Cultural socialization is a process where an individual learns the norms and values of one's own culture through family, peers, and institution. Example of this is a child learn to greet elder with respect because it's a common practice in their family culture. Cultural exchange. It happened through interaction between culture where people share traditions, foods, arts, and ideas. An example of this is when a French and Indian student exchange recipe and cook each other dishes to learn more about each other culture. Acculturations. It occurs when people adapt aspects of a new learning while retaining parts of their original culture. An example of this is an immigrant learn to speak English and celebrate the American holiday but still observe costume from their homeland. Accommodation. It is an act of making an adjustment to allow for cultural differences, often by dominant group to help integration. An example of this is a workplace who offer a prayer room for a Muslim employee and accommodate their prayer time. Assimilation is gradually adopting dominant culture to the point where no one's original culture become less visible or lost. An example of this is when an immigrant gradually stops speaking their native language and primarily use the local language even at home to fit into their new society.
Cultural hybridization. It is a creative process which yields combination of global and local cultures when external inputs interact with internal inputs. So according to Apaduray's 1996 concept of escapings, that global flows bring forth unique cultural realities everywhere. So these global flows are ethnoscapes, which means movement of people; technoscapes, which means fluid and interlinked global technology; financescapes, which means movement of huge amount of money across the nation and states; mediascape, which means fast production and transfer of information. The last one is ageoscape, which means movement of political images. So instead of clashing and conflicting cultures amid these global flows, integrate or interpenetrate one another, give birth to a hybridized form that is unique from both its global and local origins, a process referred to as localization.
Lastly, this discusses on how globalization can lead to cultural convergence or homogeneous. What is cultural convergence? Cultural convergence is where cultures become more similar across other nations. And and leading to be more isomorphic or uniform culture. And this process is linked to cultural assimilation. Cultural assimilation is where dominant culture influence others to adopt their traits. And cultural imperialism, where one culture actively imposes itself on another. And lastly, deterritorialization, which describe how culture can exist independently of their geographical unit.
Media cultures. Media cultures are the ways that different types of media like television, movies, social media, and news that shape and reflect how people think, behave, and interact. Here are the key aspects of media cultures. Number one is social media influence. Social media lets anyone share their voice, making regular people as influential as traditional news or television. The second one is the cultural representation. Media can reflect or challenge societal norms, impacting on views, identity, gender, and race. The third one is the fan cultures. Communities form around shared media interests, creating their own content and norms. The fourth one is globalization. Media allows cross-cultural exchange, spreading global trends like K-pop, K-dramas, Chinese drama, Korean food, and many more countries. The last one is social impact. Media shapes political discourse, activism, and public opinion. And in short, media impacts what we see, think, and do, shaping culture in big and small ways.
Access, production, and consumption. Access in the media means everyone can equally get information and news. It asks if access is available to all or only to those with money or status. And consider if people in remote areas like farmers receive vital updates. It also a question how people can get easily updates or access information.
Inclusion and participation. This section focuses on how people are represented in media. It questions whether portrayals are empowering or diminishing and whether media promotes a culture of dignity and equality. It also considered how media represent women, people with exceptionalities, LGBTQ, and other vulnerable and oppressed sectors.
First, acculturize. Here, cultural products are stripped of specific cultural references, making them universally applicable and devoid of identifiable cultural markers. Second, reculturize. In this case, cultural elements from one culture are infused with elements of another, creating a hybrid product with a mix of cultural markers. For example, local tradition might be combined with foreign influences to give the product a fresh cultural identity, which may resonate both locally and globally. Third, deculturize. In terms of cultural elements are strategically removed or altered to make the content more palatable or appealing to global audiences. This can lead to a loss of authenticity as culturally specific symbols or traditions may be omitted in favor of a more homogeneous, universally acceptable version of the culture. This process reflects how media culture can either dilute or enrich cultural identity. In cases of cultural hybridization, media can contribute to a global culture that reshapes local values, beliefs, and practices, impacting how marginalized or oppressed sectors see themselves and how they are perceived in broader society.